Many models that are in use at central banks or policy institutions predict that the zero lower bound might have a substantial destabilizing effects on macroeconomic variables. However, as an open question is whether the zero lower bound matters in practice. And in the sense that if we should consider the zero lower bound as one of the main factors behind the large drop in output and the slow recovery during the Great Recession. So the question we seek to answer in our research is whether there is a sort of irrelevance hypothesis of the zero lower bound. Under the irrelevance hypothesis, and let me be more explicit, one postulates that there should be no effect on the economy's response to aggregate shocks due to the zero lower bound. We focus on two particular dimensions. So we ask whether during the zero lower bound there was an increase in volatility, say of inflation, unemployment, output growth, and other macroeconomic variables. And then we look at whether those macroeconomic variables responded differently, they moved differently during the Great Recession. So, in fact, we find that there is no significant changes due to the zero lower bound, relatively, say, to previous periods in the history of the United States. The typical idea is that volatility should increase when the zero lower bound is binding due to the impossibility of a central bank to adopt the usual policies in response to economic disturbances. Our results support the idea that monetary policy was perhaps able to get around the constraints imposed by the zero lower bound, perhaps through the unconventional policies such as forward guidance or quantitative easing. The central bank, through the use of these alternative policies, was able to avoid the constraints imposed by the zero lower bound. Our results may not hold in other contexts. For instance, it would be possible that the implementation of these unconventional policies happens with a lag relatively to when the big financial shocks occur. So in some sense, the United States has an ability to implement rapidly these sort of unconventional policies, and this may be the reason why they were more effective than in other countries. If we apply the same type of analysis to the case of Japan, there the zero lower bound implied big changes relatively to other periods when the zero lower bound was not binding. And that is a confirmation that, of the idea that unconventional policies might have been effective in the United States while they were not in Japan. The result that the zero lower bound may not have imposed a big constraint on the conduct of monetary policy is certainly surprising because it contradicts the predictions of most of the existing theories. So this opens a puzzle. So how we reconcile the theory with the evidence? And of course, the fact that unconventional policies were effective is just one of the potential explanations. Another potential explanation that we do not explore in our analysis is that there are some constraints in the conduct of monetary policies, maybe related to imperfect information, an imprecise knowledge about the conditions, the economic conditions in the United States or other countries, preventing to completely insulate the economy from aggregate disturbances.